I'm Lauren Sidney in New York.
And I'm Jim Moray in Hollywood, and this is Showbiz Today. Will Linda McCartney, Ringo, and the Beatles let it be? More monster talk ahead with Kenneth Branagh, who's over the hump in Frankenstein. And the Beatles get over their battles, and Linda McCartney and Ringo Starr tell us of their latest projects.
A letter that offers a glimpse of the tension between John Lennon and Paul McCartney around the time the Beatles split is being sold. Lennon wrote the 6-page rambling letter to McCartney and his wife Linda around 1970. In sarcastic and bitter tones, Lennon defends his wife Yoko Ono, and he lashes out at Linda McCartney for perceived insults. Despite that, Lennon signed the letter with love. A Los Angeles auction house expects it to fetch between $40,000 and $60,000 next month. The identity of the seller hasn't been revealed. Linda McCartney is a noted photographer, but her latest interest has taken her from the darkroom to the kitchen. Our Dennis Michael was there as she touted her line of frozen foods.
Hi, Linda.
The press conference drew a mixed group. Food industry press, the rock and roll media, and writers for vegetarian magazines. The food industry mogul they'd come to hear was Linda McCartney. McCartney's line of frozen vegetarian meals is being introduced into U.S. supermarkets after 100 million meals have sold in the United Kingdom. She even appears in the commercials.
They're quick, easy, and delicious.
Of course, this isn't her usual venue. This is, working with her husband and collaborator, the rock and roll legend, Paul McCartney. Linda McCartney does admit she's sometimes surprised to find herself a frozen food spokesperson of all things.
Paul and I were saying today, he was saying, well, really, you're a photographer and people are going to forget that. I said, it's true. You know, I love photography and I didn't realize this food thing would take off so much. But as I say, I've done it for humans, for the animals, for the environment, so I'm quite happy with it.
And so is Paul McCartney, who isn't reluctant about showing up on Linda's behalf.
The reason they're knocking down the rainforest is mainly to feed cattle, you know. And a lot of people are kind of slightly hypocritical about that. They're trying on one hand to save the world and have the forest not cut down. But at the same time, you know, they're buying the beef and stuff.
He's a big help. I sort of say, don't bother, I'll do it. But he says, look, I love animals. I want people to be healthy. I'll join in with you. So luckily he's come along, but I haven't really encouraged it.
Even though appearances before the public inevitably mean autograph sessions and questions about a possible Beatle reunion. This time, though, McCartney can talk about a reunion in fact rather than in theory about the first new Beatles single in decades, Free as a Bird.
We managed to get an unreleased track of John's, and I phoned Ringo about it and we were talking about it. And I said, you better have a handkerchief ready, you know, when you listen to this, because this is, you know, it's pretty serious stuff for us guys, obviously. But he said, when we talked about what we might do, he said, this could really be a joyous thing. And in fact, it was. We were in the studio for 1.5 weeks, and we've made a new Beatle record. And I think it sounds very good.
It does.
Something wonderful to eat Linda's food by.
New McCartney product in the record racks will be coming in time, but you can get it right now in the frozen food section. Dennis Michael, CNN Entertainment News, Hollywood.
And Paul isn't dead, but 25 years ago, we thought the Beatles had bought it. A bizarre episode in showbiz history when Showbiz Today continues.
Imagine a boot-stomping version of the Beatles' classic song, Let It Be. It might just happen on a new tribute album to the Fab Four, being recorded by some of the biggest stars in country music. Among the selections, Tim McGraw's take on A Little Help from My Friends, Billy Dean's rendition of Yesterday, Colin Ray singing I'm Down, and the band Little Texas picking away at the song called Help. The album is due out in March.
And speaking of the Beatles, 25 years ago this month, rumors circulated around the globe that Paul McCartney was dead. Now, that turned out to be fantasy, not reality, of course, but the incident still captivates Beatle fans.
I received the call. I was on the air.
Russ Gibb was a Detroit DJ in October 1969 when a listener's call launched the first awareness to a bizarre rumor.
Hello, Tom. What's going down? I was going to rant with you about McCartney being dead. What is this all about?
Gibb was directed to play the song Revolution No. 9 backwards from the Beatles' White Album.
All of a sudden, over the air came, "Turn me on, dead man. Turn me on, dead man." Well, come on. The phone started to ring, and the rest is history.
That history, chronicled in the new book, Turn Me On, Dead Man, includes numerous so-called clues in Beatles music and album covers, fueling the theory that McCartney died and was replaced by a look-alike. The Sgt. Pepper album allegedly depicts a burial scene in the foreground. An open hand above Paul's head was interpreted as an Eastern symbol of divine blessing for someone about to be buried. On the Magical Mystery Tour album, the Beatles are dressed in costumes. A later song revealed the black walrus, purportedly a symbol of death in some cultures, was Paul.
We all thought, oh, well, we'll do a photo with Paul, but everyone would have said, well, that's the fake Paul. So, you know, it was just a bit of crazy rubbish at the time.
But the biggest collection of, quote, clues was believed found on the Abbey Road album.
Many of the cluesters, the kids back then, thought that John was the preacher, Ringo was the gravedigger, and Paul McCartney, the third one, was the corpse. He's barefoot, and he's ready for burial.
The license plate of the car along the road read 28 if, supposedly Paul's age had he lived.
Well, I remember when somebody rang up and said, there's a rumor that you're dead, and he goes, oh, great, well, fine, I'm not going to get into it because it's not true.
But Paul finally did respond by appearing on the cover of the November 7th, 1969 issue of Life magazine, along with his family.
4 kids later, 25 years later, knock on wood, we're still here.
McCartney recently spoofed the death theory on the cover of his Paul Is Live album, which depicts a car with the license 54 is. Just a footnote, just before Thanksgiving 1969, disc jockey Russ Gibb received a package from Capitol Records. Inside, the entire Beatles catalog, 14 albums, to thank him for his part